Okay, so this is Jacob's Algebra, Chapter 9, Lesson 6, which is still multiplying polynomials. We're going to learn three special cases of multiplying polynomials in this lesson. In fact, these are binomials. Remember, a monomial is when you just have one term, like 3x squared, or even just the number 25, or 41x to the fifth. Whoops, my x didn't finish. Those are monomials. And we talked about polynomials. Polynomials are just when you combine more than one monomial together. Binomial, look at the word, look at the part bi for like bicycle. Bi means two. So if you have two terms together, then it's a binomial. So 3x squared minus 25, that's a binomial because it's got two terms. If it has another term on there, plus 3x, then it's a trinomial because it has three terms. So in this lesson, we're going to learn three particular binomial combinations that are things that you will learn to just recognize when you see them. So the first one we're going to learn is the sum of two terms squared. So if we have A and we add B to it and then we square it, what we're going to get is that first term squared plus the double of the product of the two terms plus the last term squared. Now we can do this in our grid. And let me draw my grid lines. And in our grid, we can see how it works out like this. We have A and we have B. We have A, A, and we have B. A times A is A squared. A times B is AB. B times A is AB. The convention here is that when you're using variables in any kind of polynomial, you actually put the variables in the polynomial in alphabetical order. That way you don't get confused when you see AB plus BA and not realize they're the same thing, because in multiplication it doesn't matter what order you multiply it in. You can do 2 times 3 or you can do 3 times 2. It's the same answer. So the convention is to put the letters, the variables, in alphabetical order. So then our last square is going to be b times b, which is b squared. And you can see that this works out to a squared, which we have up here, 2ab because we have ab plus ab, and then b squared, which is down here. Thing you have to be careful with this is, let's say we have 2x plus 3y, and we square that. Okay, we're going to take our first term and square it. Our first term is not just 2 times x. We have to square the entire thing. It is 2x, the whole thing squared, not just the x. Then we have to double our first term times our second term. So plus 2, our first term is 2x, and then our second term is 3y, so times 3y. And then our last term is b squared. That's our last term squared. Again, this is not 3 times y squared. This is 3y, the product, squared. So when we square 2x, we get 4x squared. And then 2 times 2x times 3y, we multiply all of the just plain numbers. 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12. So we have 12xy. Again, we put the letters in alphabetical order. And then plus, I'm going to make that look more like a y. Our last one, 3y squared, that's 3 squared times y squared. 3 squared is 9, and then y squared. And then I'll do this in a grid just so you can see for sure that this really does work out this way. Put in my grid lines. Okay, so now go back to writing. We have 2x, and we have 3y. 2x and 3y. 2x times 2x is 4x squared because we have to multiply the coefficients, not just the variable. Top right box, 2x times 3y. 2 times 3 is 6, and then we have xy. Bottom left box, 3y times 2x. 2 times 3 is 6, and then we have xy. Bottom right box, 3y times 3y. 3 times 3 is 9, and then we have y squared. You can see that our 4x squared term is right here, and our 9y squared term is right there. and then 6xy plus 6xy is going to be 12xy. So the sum of two terms squared, to get that answer, you square the first term and you add it to the double of the product of the two terms, and then you add the square of the last term. Okay, now you can still just draw up the grid and multiply it out. It's just that this is something that later on you're going to need to know how to recognize, and this does show up on the SAT. So moving on to the next one, that is a minus b quantity squared. So this is the difference of two terms, and then we're squaring it. Okay, so the way that this one works out is that we square the first term, a squared. We subtract the product of the two terms, and then we add the square of our last term. And we can see that this works out when we do a grid. And let me, draw my grid lines across. So we have a and negative b, a and negative b. A times a is a squared. A times negative b is negative ab. Negative b times a is negative ab. Alphabetical order, remember. Negative b times negative b is a positive b squared, because negative times negative is positive. And you can see we have our a squared here. Negative AB and negative AB is negative 2AB. And then we have a positive B squared at the end. Okay, so again, you have to be careful when you have things like, oh, let's do 3x minus 4y squared. So you have to be careful because we have numbers and those numbers are included. So our first term, when we multiply this out, is going to be their first term squared. So this is going to be 3x quantity squared. Not just 3 times x squared, the 3 has to be squared also. And then we're going to subtract the double of 3x times 4y. And then we're going to add our last term squared, that is 4y squared. So 3x quantity squared, because the 3 is included since it's in the parentheses, that is 9x squared. Minus 2 times 3x times 4y, that is going to be minus 24xy. And then our last term, 4 times y, the quantity squared, that's going to be 16y squared. And you will see that this works out when we put it in a grid. Let me draw my grid lines in. Okay, and now I will actually put our numbers in. 3x and negative 4y. 3x and negative 4y. Our first box is 3x times 3x. That is 9x squared. Top right box, 3x times negative 4y. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. And then we have xy. Bottom left box, negative 4y times 3x. Negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, and then we have xy. Bottom right box, negative 4y times negative 4y. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, and then we have a y squared. You will see our 9x squared term is right here. We have negative 12xy and negative 12xy, that is negative 24xy. And then we have a positive 16y squared, that's what's at the end. Okay, the last pattern is what we call later we'll call it the difference of two squares. Right now we're calling it the product of the sum and difference of two terms. What if we have a plus b, the sum of two terms, multiplied by a minus b, the difference of those same two terms? In this case, what we end up with is the first term squared minus the second term squared. There's nothing else. There's nothing in the middle. And the reason this works out, we will see when we do our box. Draw my grid lines in. Okay, so we have, I'm going to do 2x plus 3y and 2x minus 3y. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. 2x times negative 3y is negative 6xy. 3y times 2x, that is positive 6xy. 3y times negative 3y, that is negative 9y squared. So what we get is 4x squared. We have a negative 6xy and a positive 6xy. Those cancel. And then minus 9y squared. What was our a term? Our a term was 2x. So a equals 2x. Our b term was 3y. What is a squared? That's 4x squared because we have to square the coefficient also. Our b squared is 9y squared. And look at this, a squared minus b squared. So those are the two new things that are the three new particular things that are learned in this lesson. It's nothing really new. It's just three particular patterns that it would be very useful to memorize by the time you get to the end of this course. This does show up all over the place. You will see it many, many, many times. Okay, now to get on to actually working some of the problems. So let's look at number 4, part D. Number 4, part D, they give you a worked out diagram. So here's a diagram. Let me draw the grid lines. Okay, and they show 2 and negative 7b, and they show 2 and positive 7b. So here we have 4, negative 14b, positive 14b, and negative 49b squared. And they said, what question is illustrated by the diagram? For that, what they're asking is, what is the problem that is being shown and what is the answer to the problem? Well, the problem being shown is 2 plus 7b times 2 minus 7b, because we're taking the product of these terms that are along the sides of the box. The answer is 4 minus 49b squared, because the negative 14b and the positive 14b, they cancel out. So that is the answer for number 4, part D, and this is just like number 11. When it says what equation is illustrated by the diagram, they want you to write out not just the problem, but also what the final answer is. Okay, new page. Let's look at problem number 5. Problem number 5 is just like problem number 12. It says make a diagram to illustrate each of the following expressions. Then use the diagram to write each expression as a polynomial. Okay, so the problem you're given, let's look at part B. We have 5x plus 2y, and the quantity is squared. So make a diagram. So let's draw our box and put in our grid lines. Okay, so the problem is 5x plus 2y times 5x plus 2y. So the top left box is going to be 5x times 5x. 5 times 5 is 25. X times x is x squared. Top right box, 5x times 2y. 5 times 2 is 10, and then we have x, y. Bottom left box, we have 2y times 5x. 2 times 5 is 10, and then we have x, y, because remember we're going to write the variables in alphabetical order inside of one term. And then our bottom right box, we have 2y times 2y. 2 times 2 is 4. Y times y is y squared. Now we have to write out the expression as a polynomial. That just means give the answer. So we'll start off with the 25x squared. And then we need to look at our xy terms. We have 10xy plus 10xy, so that's going to be plus 20xy. And then our last term is 4y squared, plus 4y squared. And that's all that it's looking for 5b. Now let's look at 5c. 5c has the problem 4a minus 3 quantity squared. Okay, so we're still supposed to make a diagram. I'm going to make a diagram here and draw my grid lines, and it looks like this problem I will probably have to finish in part 2, but I'll at least get it written. So we have 4a minus 3 and then 4a minus 3, and I will finish this problem in the part 2 video.